This next article is even crazier, and I almost hesitated to bring it up because I don't fully understand the details of what's going on here. But I'm going to try to throw this out. If anybody has a better understanding of this, let us know. Give us a comment. I'd like to know more about this. So the headline is 45% of ETH validators now comply with US sanctions. So let me preface this a little bit. Now that Ethereum is completely proof of stake, and we know that now that basically validators pay 32 ETH to become a validator in the Ethereum network, and they now have a node that transactions on the Ethereum network will run through. And they build the blocks and say, okay, this is a secure block. Everything looks good. I'll pass this on. Different with proof of work, which is Bitcoin, and it used to be Ethereum, where each of the nodes network had to run these very, very complex calculations to become a validator of a transaction. And once it did, which took up a lot of energy, is still controversial about that, then it could say, okay, look at this block and this transaction, and it looks good, and pass it down to the next node or whatever. Proof of stake does this, but you don't have, there's not the calculations to prove that you're a valid node in the network. The fact that you've got 32 ETH, or I'm sure a lot of validators have a lot more, tied up in the network, you're not going to do something malicious because that would put your stake or your money or ETH, whatever, at risk. So that's the basic mechanism of proof of stake and why it now runs really well in Ethereum. But there is something insidious in the detail of this, and it's called I believe it's called MVE, MEV. Now, according to the CEO of blockchain development agency Labris, this guy named Lachlan Feeney, approximately 45% of all the Ethereum blocks currently being validated run an MEV boost relay flash bot, which complies with the United States sanctions. Okay, so let me try to unpack this in the limited amount that I really get this. But one of the things that's interesting that isn't talked about, I've listened to some podcasts, I've read some articles, but it's this underneath that when blocks are going through the blockchain, now they come to a validator who basically runs software and has to check that block and make sure that it looks good, that there's no errors, and that it's a valid block on the blockchain. And it basically appends the block before it, and if it looks good, it'll append that to the next block and then send it on its way to another validator who will look at it. And there's multiple validations. And this is how the networks are secure. This is how they basically make sure that there's no invalid transactions, right? And so that all sounds fine, and people sort of understand as the basic of how blockchain works. But what I didn't realize, apparently these validators have the ability to pick and choose which blocks they want to actually send on. It's not an automatic thing. It's not automatic that a block comes in and has to get checked and they can send it out, validate and send it out. They can pick and choose which blocks to even look at. Which at first I thought, okay, when I first heard about this, I thought, okay, that's interesting. Because if that's the case, then they can pick and choose. There must be some reasons and incentives that they would pick one block over another block, right? Apparently there is. And what this MEV Boost Relay Flashbot does is it now looks and has some code in there that says, is this block, does it have a USDC transaction that might have gone through Tornado Cash? And what this does is it flags those. And it says, whoops, this block has a transaction that it does not comply with United States sanctions. And they can do something with that. I don't know. This is where I don't really know the answers. Do they then reject it? Do they flag it and send it to the authorities? I don't really know what happens. But just the fact that this happens is scary in a way. And so what he's saying here is that most of the validators now are using this piece of software, this Flashbot, to check this and see if this block meets United States sanctions. And then going on, it says, Speaking to them in an interview, Freeney noted that while the reports have stated that 25% of all blocks validated since the merge comply with United States sanctions, this is a lagging indicator, and the current number is likely closer to 1 out of every 2 blocks. So again, he's saying 1 out of every 2 blocks is being checked for, that it's being sanctioned. Then he points out that this MEV boost relay are regulated businesses, often US based, and are censoring certain transactions in the blocks that they build, particularly transactions from Tornado Cash. The CEO also points out that validators have a financial incentive to use MEV boosted relays that would drive an uptick in their usage, noting, and get this, the issue is that from the validator's perspective, these guys are paying them to do this. So if you want to make more money, you just turn this feature on as a validator and you boost your yield. Really? So, wow. MEV boost relays are centralized entities dedicated to efficient maximal extractable value, MEV extraction. Again, I don't even really understand what that means, but it's some sort of efficient way to like process these blocks. But there's all these caveats on top of it that there is an incentive to use this software. So whoever controls this software or creates this software then now sort of in control of block validation. And again, I may be blowing this a little bit out of proportion, but this scares the hell out of me. And I've heard some other podcasts of people talking about this, saying that this could, if fully underexposed or fully blown out, could really bring down Ethereum. Now, I don't want to be a crazy conspiracy theorist, but this is a eye-opening article. This guy says that we're just trying to raise some awareness of those who are unaware that by running the software, they are potentially contributing to censorship of the network. This is weird. So he noted the worst case situation often referred to as hard censorship, where nodes would be forced by regulation to basically discard any blocks with any of these transactions in them. That would mean that no matter how long you waited, no matter how much you paid, say in gas fees, you would never get to a point where those sanctioned transactions would get included in the blockchain. He pointed out that even in the event of soft censorship, where sanctioned transactions would eventually be validated, it could take hours and require a high priority fee, resulting in subpar user experience. Wow. What do you think about this? Are you wowed about this as I am?
Yeah, that's not good. And I did see something that was really similar, just talking about the centralization of Ethereum and why just the fact that there's that much happening in the United States now, that's really bringing it into the United States. But not going in as far as you did with Tornado Cash, that's really alarming. And not just because of Tornado Cash, but thinking of where this could go in the future. And with every instance, really, I guess it comes down to who's determining who's on the back end of what is going to be sanctioned and what could be, that's really...
Yeah. Well, does this sound decentralized to you?
No, not at all.
Not at all. So again, I don't know enough about this to like really be alarmist, but it's something worth looking into, and people should Google this, like MEV, Ethereum block MEV. And there's a lot of information out there, but I think, I really almost didn't want to do this, but as we talked about this stuff, I just thought, let's just throw it out here. Again, I don't want to be an alarmist. I love crypto, but there is a lot of information like this, and something like this could really get out there and be spun completely negative and not mainly accurate. So I don't really want to be that way. But when you're reading this, there is something there clearly about this being able to pick and choose which blocks to send through. That doesn't sound decentralized to me at all. And so are we fooling ourselves? Again, I'm not saying that this is necessarily the case, but let's all look into this. Let's not be fooled by this, because Ethereum is as Bitcoin is, it's touted as pure decentralized network, and proof of stake being purely a decentralized way to secure and run the network. And so we heard all this stuff about the merge and all this great stuff, and it's going to do all these great things, and supposedly it is. But again, this doesn't happen. I don't think, again, I'm not a coder or expert at this level, but this doesn't happen in Bitcoin as far as I understand, because proof of work is a completely different mechanism. So I think there's a lot more hands off. Whereas validation, people are now a validator, and they can pick and choose which blocks to aggregate. And when I first learned about this, it was something about the way that this happens is, and again, it's at a really complicated level that most people don't understand or think or even do unless you are a validator and then you know about this. And it's the software that runs in your computer. And the cool thing is you and I just have to have a normal computer, and we can run Ethereum validation software on a normal computer. Unlike proof of work, where you need these special rigs and all this high power stuff to do. So you just need to run the software, the validation software, to be able to do this on a fairly normal computer, from what I understand. But there are mechanisms, different ways that you can validate blocks in this way, which I didn't understand. I thought, you just run the software, your hands off, it just validates, it just runs. But there's this flash bot kind of software that you can turn on or turn off. Again, that doesn't seem right to me, that you should be able to pick and choose. It should be standard. If you're a validator, everybody should be the same, running the same software, doing the same thing. It doesn't sound like that's actually the case.